deserved the sickness that he got. And they trotted out the usual hacks to explain why he deserved it.
A lot of people have been put in jeopardy by the president's behavior, and now we've learned, of course, this morning that one of those people is the president himself.
But he just couldn't get over the fact that in his mind, the mask equals weakness equals I'm not on top of this virus.
CNN. So perhaps a bit of a shock this morning for Americans, but not necessarily a surprise.
It is also the most vivid possible demonstration of the incompetence and the irresponsibility of the administration.
The Clinton News Network.
It's his own dereliction is partly to blame for this. He chose to go out to rallies.
Clinton's media lapdogs.
He just announced he was infected. He just got to Walter Reed. He deserved it.
It'd be interesting to note,
They didn't wait long.
Hillary Clinton waited 8 hours after Joe Biden to tweet out well wishes to Donald Trump.
Hundreds of thousands have died. CNN's
These people are disgusting.
They all deserved it. They must have. They were careless. They were derelict in their duties. If there was a lesson from the coverage of this, it's a very familiar lesson. The media class is willing to attack the rest of the country if they think it will hurt the president they despise, if they think it will give them more political power.
They can't take the high road.
It wasn't just the media. In fact, the official message of the Democratic Party is that Donald Trump had it coming.
They gotta politicize
we
everything.
see that news with great sadness. I always pray for the president and his family that they're safe. I continue to do so.
Bull crap.
This is tragic. It's very sad.
Give me a break, lady.
Also, is something that again, going into crowds, unmasked and all the rest, was sort of a brazen invitation for something like this to happen.
Brazen invitation. He asked for it. He was dressed provocatively. That's what Nancy Pelosi just told you. Many other Democrats are echoing that sentiment. Rick Leventhal has been following this reaction from the Democratic Party. He joins us tonight to explain more. Rick?
Hey, Tucker, there are a lot of people wishing the President and First Lady well on Twitter, sending thoughts and prayers for a speedy recovery, but no surprise, the haters are not holding back approval of content when it has a clear call to action that could cause real-world harm. That's a quote. Meanwhile, the President's tweet announcing he had the virus was his most popular ever, at last count, tallying 1.7 million likes, Tucker.
Unbelievable.
Twitter to suspend accounts of those wishing death on Trump.
If you find yourself rooting for someone's death, anyone's death, it's time to pause and take stock of how your own soul has rotted. We're all going to die in the end. And trust me, as we do, we're going to regret thinking things like that about other people. We actually debated whether or not to put that on the air tonight. It's so ugly in general. Our enemies don't put things on TV that are that ugly.
Wow.
But we felt we should because it is everywhere today. And we want you to know why.
It's the world we live
There are
in.
some who are rooting for the president's demise and the vice president's demise so that Nancy Pelosi might become president. That sounds insane, and it is, but they put it on MSNBC anyway. Why?
That's right.
This is a very serious health threat. You are second in line for the presidency. Has the White House contacted you?
Third in line.
CNN had a similar message today. So this is political opportunism, obviously, but it's more than that. It's spiritual sickness. Hatred, festering hatred has driven these people bananas, truly. On CNN today, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, who sits in the United States Senate, proved the point better than we ever could. Here's what he said.
If President Trump can't be out there on the campaign trail for the next 2 weeks, then he is going to rely on his surrogates. And unfortunately, one of his surrogates is Vladimir Putin.
Look at this fool.
We're likely going to see this campaign ramped up by Russia over the next few weeks to try to substitute for the president's absence on the campaign trail.
I'm sorry. Again, we apologize even for playing garbage like that.
What do you even say to that?
With a life-threatening illness, he seems
These
to be
guys are
fine,
crazy.
but you don't know. And that buffoon is on television saying Vladimir Putin is one of his surrogates. Probably some teenage assistant wrote that for you. He thinks it's clever. We put that on the air because we want you to know what they're saying. As the president,
There's no collusion, no obstruction, but they're going to keep on saying it.
Mark Steyn joins us tonight to decode what they're saying. As always, the clearest thinker we know. Mark Steyn, great to see you. What is this?
Well, just to, I hadn't heard that thing from Chris Murphy till you played it just now, Tucker.
The
That
LOONEY
is
left.
absolutely ridiculous. The idea that Trump's in the hospital so his surrogate Putin will have to do more interference. Just to get back to reality,
Can I just say, and I mean this, I would rather live in a country run by Putin than by Chris Murphy, I'll tell you that. I mean it. I'd rather live in a country run by anybody than someone like Chris Murphy. Truly.
Oh, no, if Chris Murphy is in the line of succession, I'm on the first plane out of here because it's over. What's actually happened is that the real colluders, the real interferers, the Chinese Communist Party has managed to impact three of the G7 leaders. They put my old chum Boris in the intensive care unit, and he's never been the same since. He's permanently damaged. They put the Prime Minister of Canada's wife. She's had this thing, and now we have the President of the United States. So that's 3/7 of the G7. That's a pretty impressive strike rate from the real strategic threat to this country, while Chris Murphy is talking about his clapped-out, stupid, 4-year-old Russia conspiracy that, in fact, is nothing to do with anything real anywhere on the planet.
That is a really deep point. And I have to ask you, I wasn't expecting to go here. What do you mean? So you work, for our viewers who don't know, you worked with as a journalist with Boris Johnson, who currently runs Great Britain. He's Prime Minister. What do you mean he's never been the same since? What were the effects of it on him?
Well, I think one of the things I urge particularly is that when Boris first was diagnosed, he stayed in 10 Downing Street and he carried on tweeting and he carried on doing these little Skypey videos, and he overworked, which wound up putting him in the hospital with more severe symptoms. But he came out a changed man, and in fact his ministry is changed. The entire government of the United Kingdom is kind of listless and hasn't properly convalesced from his illness. And my concern here, by the way, this is a remarkable series of events. The story's been moving through the day. But if Boris is anything to go by, even when you get over the COVID, and let's not forget that the president is 20 years older than Boris, even when you get over the COVID, you can't then immediately go back on the campaign trail and be working 24/7. I'm concerned if Boris is the model here, that effectively the president will be out of combat from now till November the 3rd.
President has to slow down.
That actually is the October surprise to end them all.
So we have evidence, there's real scientific evidence from scientists, we don't know this definitively, but we're not going to dismiss it, that this virus emerged from a Chinese government lab in Wuhan, China, in central China. And yet, we seem to have this kind of weird gentleman's agreement never to mention that, or never to mention Chinese culpability in this scourge. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think for a start there are real penalties to be made for annoying the Chinese. The Chinese actually invaded India in May while we were all in lockdown. Nobody noticed it, but they actually got into a shooting war with India. What they've done in Hong Kong is basically a big up yours to Boris. They've threatened the Australians. They're on the rise. They're actually doing this every day. The Chinese government newspaper was gloating within hours about the president and the first lady's diagnosis. And yet this buffoon, who is one of the 300 million Americans one of 100 from 300 million people who gets to sit in the United States Senate, thinks this is something to do with Putin. I mean, this is Orwellian. The fact that we've actually got a rampant China threatening all manner of countries, boasting about how it flies into Taiwanese airspace when American cabinet officials are there just to tell them who's really boss. And Chris Murphy thinks, the president being taken to the hospital is just a great opportunity to dust off the old 4-year-old Putin jokes. Pathetic.
We've been so up our own butts in this country, so inwardly focused, that we're missing, and I don't want to overstate this because I don't want to be hysterical, but effectively a massive expansion of Chinese hegemony around the world. I don't want to say Chinese takeover of the world, but I mean that's where we're moving, it seems like.
No, well, absolutely. We're like the beginning
Run.
of the Godzilla movie, where there's a strange indentation in the ground, and we're all standing around in it saying what's going on, and then the camera pans up, and you realize it's a giant footprint.
Right.
Well, Ron
And
Paul
the giant
talked about
footprint
this
is China's.
years
So when
ago.
you're like this buffoon Murphy, and you're doing your 4-year-old Putin gags, you're actually wasting valuable time in public discourse. For a couple, and this is again my worry, because actually the president, you know, really the whole rise of China was a bipartisan racket in Washington, and President Trump personally was the one who actually put it on the front burner and addressed it. And my concern is that actually there wasn't a single question about China at that debate a couple of days ago. And my concern is that with the president in hospital, there's not going to be any more talk about China.
Right. Oh, white supremacy, BLM, yeah. And we're missing the transformation of the world, which is transforming to our disadvantage, which will be the central fact of our grandchildren's lives. But we're just kind of acting like it's not happening because, like, something happened in Louisville. I mean, this is embarrassing. We're embarrassing ourselves.
No. Absolutely. And as I said, 3 G7 governments have been hit at the very highest level. 3 out of 7. That's a hell of a strike rate for the Chinese.
Yeah. It's time to break the spell of narcissism and wake up. There is a rest of the world out there. I really appreciate your sounding that call. Mark Steyn,
Thanks a lot, Tucker. Thank you.
Well, as Donald Trump Jr. is here
There
with
you
an
have
update
it.
on his father's condition. Don, first of all, thanks for coming on.